So the claim I'm responding to is that purchasing dogs from pet stores negatively affects the well-being of the dog population as a whole. The opponent's secondary claims are, first, purchasing dogs from pet stores funds puppy mills, which adds to the problem of dog overpopulation. Second, that puppy mills are inhumane and mistreat dogs. And third, that dogs that come from puppy mills often come with many health problems. So for the first claim, that purchasing dogs from pet stores funds puppy mills, which adds to the problem of dog overpopulation, the advocate claims that there are surpluses of dogs everywhere, but does not say how much of a surplus it is and where exactly. Just saying everywhere isn't very convincing. Is it everywhere in LA County, everywhere in California, the US? It isn't ever mentioned specifically. There's also no cited evidence for the overpopulation of dogs. It seems like she either assumed that there is dog overpopulation, or they assumed that the audience knew that there was already an overpopulation problem. The advocate also claims that shelters are overcrowded, again with no evidence. And the claim itself suggests that funding puppy mills directly leads to overpopulation, but once again has no evidence that these are even related issues. They also mentioned some statistics on shelters, which states that 61% of dogs are adopted or returned to their owners, while 31% are euthanized, which actually suggests that overpopulation is not as big of a problem as the advocate claims. And once again, the evidence isn't even cited, and this evidence does not offer any direct correlation with the claim. In the second claim, puppy mills are inhumane and mistreat dogs. The definition of inhumanity can be debated here. Is it legally inhumane, or is it inhumane in your opinion? The same goes with being mistreated. Some of the information that is provided, that is taken from a resource called paws.org, directly relates to so-called backyard breeders, which are not the same as puppy mills. For example, backyard breeders have much smaller operations and sell privately and directly to owners instead of through pet stores, which is the point of her main claim that specifically is about purchasing from pet stores. Therefore, some of the information provided is irrelevant. The advocate also talks about the legalities of some things, such as the size of cages and how long a dog can be a breeder, but again, the legality of it does nothing for the argument if the definition of being inhumane has not been clearly stated. If anything, this can mean that the research has been done on the issue, and at least enough of research to create actual laws about it. The third claim, that dogs that come from puppy mills often come with many health problems. The advocate claims that inbreeding is detrimental, but does not explain why it is until many statements later, which is just a problem with organization. They also gave a lot of information about inbreeding, but only about half of it is actually cited. As a whole, only the first of the secondary claims directly correlates with the main claim, which makes it sort of a chain argument. However, with this particular claim that purchasing dogs from pet stores negatively affects the dog population as a whole, the information provided in the very first secondary claim is not convincing enough because of the lack of reliable evidence, which dismantles the other claim's credibility. The entire argument seems distant from the main claim, especially related to purchasing from pet stores, and therefore loses its meaning.
Okay, all the structural stuff is fine. On the first point where most of your argument is contained, there are a lot of presses about the evidence that the advocate used and the way they make their inferences about the surplus number of dogs. I think that at the bottom of your argument there, that you have a pretty good piece of analysis that you're talking about. If 61% of the dogs in shelters get returned, that suggests that it's not because of puppy mills. People want the dogs, you know, they just got away and got lost. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's an overpopulation. 39% don't get returned. There could be some explanation. I guess the assumption here is by the advocate that these are dogs that were never adopted and then they were just turned into the shelters in the first place. That, I think, is a good place to press on what kind of proof there is to suggest that this difference is really accounted for by unwanted dogs that come from places that people the puppy mills are producing them, that sort of thing. The other presses, I think, are a little bit thin. On the second point, on the value argument, the difference between what is humane and inhumane and what is legal and illegal, that's a reasonable point to mention as an argument, although I don't know that it addresses the point that the advocate's making. I do think that you have pressed a little bit on that first point. What is the source of the dogs? We never have any information about how many puppy mills there are, how many dogs come from puppy mills, what the total population of dogs is I think those would be good questions to point out and suggest that the advocate has failed to meet the standard there that would show that there's a link. The value argument, like you're talking about, I do think, for instance, the backyard breeders, if that's a particularly significant problem, and in fact that's the argument that the advocate used, that doesn't fit their claim about puppy mills, that there's something different about that group of people, and they're not selling to the pet stores, so there obviously isn't going to be any relationship there. I think that that's a good reasoning challenge on that particular point. On the general health problems, I don't know that you get that much from arguing about their organizational structure and the lack of clarity on why inbreeding is a problem. I don't think that doesn't really help much. I think there are better arguments to be, better presses to make. I don't know that there are better arguments to make. Some dogs have more health problems. The question is that because of the puppy mills? Is that because of a lack of regulation? Or is that because, here's the real one, is that because people are buying from pet stores? My guess would be that the pets that they're buying from pet stores, if they come from puppy mills, are sick or they have some kind of problem, then we're back to which is the cause and which is the effect. Is it they're sick because they come from puppy mills, or do people buy the dogs from the pet stores and they're sick and that's the problem? It's a little bit confusing there. Basically, your speech at the end ends up sounding like a critique of the argument rather than a refutation of the argument, and maybe the argument did need to be critiqued a little bit, but I do think that you're sometimes splitting hairs to try and make an argument. I think you've got a couple of good places where there is some reasoning issue that's being applied here. It's a cause-effect claim that's going on here, and the real question comes down to how confident we are that this is the causality of that particular problem. All right, thank you.